If everyone's all set, I will take a motion to open the March 4th meeting of the School Building Committee.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Bob. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. Robert.
Robert Worth, aye.
Bob Meany, yes?
John Messina, yes.
Carolyn Casey, yes?
Leo Brem, yes.
Thank you. All right, welcome everybody. This is our agenda for this evening. I'm going to briefly explain the process of the interviews we're going to do tonight for an OPM. Then we have 3 interviews scheduled at 4 o'clock. The Vertex Company will be here. At 5 o'clock, the PMA Consultants, and at 6 o'clock, CHA Consulting. At 7 o'clock, after the interviews are finished, we will have a little break with some food and water here, and then a discussion of and scoring of for the subcommittee of our 3 finalists. So for those who didn't know, we had 37 companies make a request for our RFS, and out of those 37, we got 8 final submissions. The OPM subcommittee scored those submissions, and there were 3 companies that came out in the top for scoring, and those are the 3 that we are seeing tonight. After the 3 presentations, we will then use a different scoring criteria. We'll be scoring according to the questions, the interview questions, and then we'll be rank ordering the 3 interview finalists from top with a 1, 2, 3 order. When we're done that part of the meeting, we will have just a brief communication update, and then that will be the end of our meeting tonight. So this is an open meeting and the public is welcome. However, there is no public participation this evening because there will be interviews. The interviews are done in a presentation format. The companies will come in. They've already been given the interview questions. They will set up. They will do their presentations. The subcommittee may ask a clarifying question if one of the answers to one of the interview questions needs more explanation. But there will be no other questions taken from the public. Public is welcome to come as long as you come at the beginning of the interview. Once the doors are closed and the interview's in progress, we're not going to interrupt. But if you don't make the 4 o'clock and you want to come to the 5 or 6, please do, and we are at the safety building. Any questions from anyone before I welcome in Vertex, which is our first?
Do you want to mention recording, that you were recording?
We are recording. Medfield TV is recording this whole process.
I just don't have the interview questions in front of me. I'm trying to hook up to the Wi-Fi. You don't have an extra copy, do you?
I do. I will give you that.
Thank you.
Yes, I need 2 copies. Sorry, I should have printed some out for the committee. Michael, is there a way?
I can share the questions. Would you like
Could
it?
you share it with Therese?
That's okay. If you need this back, I can just take a picture and
Okay.
I'll have it on my phone.
So that Bill, Therese can see
So I
the
can get
interview
it.
questions? That will probably be very helpful.
There you go.
Robert,
I
Thank
believe
you.
they already have it.
Is there an extra copy?
Yeah.
I thought that was the only copy. Okay.
I won't be ready when you down on it, so,
Thanks.
That was good. I'm sorry, Robert, I should have those. Any other questions from anybody on the committee before we start?
So we're just a set of ears back here, so when the 7
Yes.
o'clock time comes to talk through, we can chime in with our
And
input
then,
if we have.
and then, yes, it'll be our regular committee, and we can have discussions. We are going to do a little break just because these people are hungry and brought some food in.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. I also will say, I'm going to actually, let me send that to everybody now. The neighborhood captains met, and we're going to talk about that later. And one of the captains put together a flyer that looks pretty good, and I just want to get your opinion from everybody later about whether or not we could pass that out. So I'm going to, because I have a minute here, I'm going to send the flyer to you. And we can just talk about it and share that. Let me just download. I think I already downloaded it. Okay. Yeah, just give me one more minute. Oh, hi, welcome. All right. So I'm forwarding everybody here. It says flyer. And it's just an attachment, and you can take a look at that. We'll talk about that at the end of the meeting when we get to communication updates. Just a note for the minutes that Meredith Chamberlain is here. Meredith will be starting just a minute. We'll be welcoming Vertex in.
Thank you.
All right. And thumbs up, everybody's all set? Okay, Christine, do you wanna get? You might need a minute to hitch up for technology. Tony will probably be coming in at any minute too. If somebody sees Tony, if I'm not looking at the door, can you wave him in if he shows up?
Oh, yeah.
He's on his way.
Oh, there's only one.
We should just, the other one should just pick up, try a little.
Other side.
You gotta rotate the.
Oh, okay, forget it. We'll just rotate.
Screwdriver. Just a little dime or something.
We can rotate.
Oh, here.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi, thank you. Come on back here. Second, third row, pick any seat you want. So glad you could make it.
I think we're good.
It happened to me. Should be up here. Plug covers like this. It's like getting into a treasure chest. Who did?
We're just doing it in the finalist section, right? The face-to-face.
Hi, welcome. Come on in. We have chairs, or if you want to stand, whatever works best for you, right up there. Okay. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'm good.
So let me just welcome you to the Medfield School Building Committee. I'm Carolyn Casey, the co-chair, and Bill Warner's going to raise his hand over there. Chair. This is an open public session, so we are recording this. We have members of the public here and also mainly members of the committee. We are very excited to have you here. Thank you so much for submitting, to the first process and now step 2 in the questions. And so we're here to listen. We have 45 minutes, and we just welcome you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate you providing Vertex the opportunity to show you why we're the right team for the Dale School project. You have our written proposal. Hopefully by now you've also checked our references and see the good work that we've done in other municipalities around you. We tried to keep our presentation at 35 minutes to allow a little bit of time for Q&A or to go deeper on specific topics as may be the desire of the committee. Hopefully at the conclusion of that presentation, you understand the Vertex differentiators, right, that shows how we're a proactive firm, whether it's a cost, schedule, or community engagement approach. As we know, those are all important factors for this particular project. I'm Jeff D'Amico. I'm the project director, lead this team. I'm also a Medfield resident for the past 10.5 years and worked in the town for the 4 years prior to that, so I'm very familiar with the community at large. I have 23 years experience as an owner's project manager, the majority of that in the public sector, doing K-12 and municipal projects with the highest focus on K-12. I personally have led 9 elementary school projects through the MSBA process in addition to the high school and middle school projects that I've worked on. Including 4 of which are upper elementary school projects. So this project is right in my wheelhouse in terms of the type and skill that it requires. I will bring the strategic vision to the overall feasibility study process, helping lead the school building committee and the project consultants at large, all the way from the beginning to the end. I'm gonna let my team introduce themselves.
Haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, you didn't get it yet? We just double check that while they're doing that. Their faces are on the placemat that we sent around to you too, so you can kind of see all of our faces as they go around. I'll let Kate pick it up.
Hi, Kate Schroth, Senior Project Manager. I have over 15 years of experience in the OPM field, and prior to that, I have my master's in architecture, and I've worked for architect firms and also contractors. I focus on K-12 new construction and ad renovation projects. I also have higher ed experience as well. I'm very organized, and I pride myself in being proactive versus reactive.
I'm Meredith Borden. I'm the Assistant Project Manager. I will be doing the FF&E transition management as well. I've been with Vertex for around 6 years, started as an intern when I was in high school, and then worked part-time, full-time, and as an intern through my undergraduate and master's program.
Give me 2 seconds.
And then I also have recently worked on the Walpole Middle School and High School with Kate, as well as a Framingham Elementary School right now.
George McMahon, Construction Site Manager here at Vertex. I'm a licensed construction supervisor with over 15 years experience, both on the GC side as well as the OPM side. I'll be your eyes, ears, boots on the ground in the field. Excuse me. I have experience in addition and renovations as well as new building construction. I'm currently working on a 100,000 square foot ad reno with Jeff in the town of Hopkinton. And I've worked with every team player that we have up here on different projects.
Hi, I'm Mary Cuppins. I head up our OPM project accounting group. I've been with our firm for 17 plus years, a little over 17, and have worked on many, many projects with all of these folks. I'm here today to answer any questions that you might have about our financial reporting and MSBA reimbursements.
So in addition to our core team that we've assembled here and on the slide whenever it does launch, you'll see that Vertex actually has a lot of in-house accessibility. So yeah, slide 2. And so in addition to us, we do drawing reviews and peer reviews as we get to various milestones. We go through the design process, which that comes later, of course, after the feasibility study process. In addition to that, we have an environmental group that we bring in for hazardous materials investigation and or monitoring should they be needed. But more so, they're all resources and sounding boards for us to utilize in the office. In addition to that, we proposed 2 sub-consultants, one which is PM&C. They're a cost estimator, that's one of the leading cost estimators in public construction in Massachusetts. And the second one is Integral Data Systems. We're not going to talk as much about it today because you didn't ask a lot about sustainability in your questions, but we can take that in Q&A if you want. One of the realities is when you do these forward-thinking sustainable buildings with geothermal and all-electric and things like that that may be considered in the town of Medfield because of the prior votes you guys have taken in town about being sustainable, means you got to really dial in that building. That's very different than the buildings you opened even 2 years ago. And so we recommend bringing on a consultant, whether it's IDS or anybody else, someone to help you fine-tune the building and to make sure you achieve the rebates that are out there from both Mass Save locally and the IRA, should that survive long-term. Currently still in the works and still working for geothermal today as it relates to those federal rebates. So that slide there works. So we're going to, you can go back to the last slide. Just a little bit about Vertex in terms of the firm itself. We're a 650-person firm headquartered in Braintree, Massachusetts. We are a 52-person dedicated OPM group that sit within that office. So I have 52 people that just do owner's project management work in Massachusetts with a few projects in Rhode Island. And that's where we put our focus. And we have a focused brand of customer service, which really leads to our repeat clients and repeat customers and the long track record that Vertex has done over the years. Next slide. Part of the reason for that, and kind of building on that note, is you'll note on the image on the right side of this, which is also on your placemat, it shows all the neighboring towns where we have done their capital school projects only. And this doesn't include the police and fire and town halls that we've done in these towns. This is just school projects, and we've done the majority of all the school projects in the surrounding area. So we know the towns around you. We understand the demographics here. Many of these, when you see 2s and 3s, we had to be procured separately each time because of the good work that we did on these 5-year projects. It built a trust and reputation with those individual towns, and they hired us a second and third time, including Hopkinton, where George and I are working on their third project as we wrap up their second project, and Kate and Meredith worked on 2 in Walpole. So we have a track record of really being a valuable resource for these towns, so much so that they see the confidence in us to bring them back for their next most important project after that one concludes. This team has a deep understanding of MSBA process. We also have a deep experience with 17 years of K-12 experience that we can leverage throughout the process, whether it's feasibility, design development, constructions, dealing with change orders, dealing with issues with subs. We have the experience, we have the know-how. My team will touch on that a little bit later. We're skilled at leading through challenging projects, whether it's coming up with the concepts early on or getting through funding votes. Funding votes are no longer a sure thing. You know that from your history where this project was before, and many other recent projects in and around the state that are not getting passed, right? The dollars that cost these projects today are very high, right? And there's larger stakes at risk. And so the communication to the public is key, and that's really a key for this project, which we're going to touch on. Whether you choose a new building or an ad reno on the existing site, this team has the necessary skill set to do that. This is the team that you'll see throughout the project. We're here and committed to be with you throughout the duration of the project. Based on my understanding about living in Medfield and the past projects and following along your work on the building committee with your nice transparent website, I'm ready to hit the ground running and help you get this project back in front of the voters. Next slide. One of the pillars at Vertex is team, plan, execute. In order to have a successful project, you have to assemble the right team. For your specific project, that's about making sure you have an OPM that not only understands how to build K through 12 schools, but also how to engage the community in a fair and open and balanced process that brings you all the way from the beginning to the end of the process. Ultimately, once you pick your option, whether you go CM at risk or design, bid, build, we'll dictate that based on the complexity of the project, which we'll talk a little bit later on in the presentation. One of the things we do that differentiates us from other OPM firms is we're proactive, and that's planning, right? You can't accomplish a complex project like this without doing your due diligence and putting the right plan together. So you need to be proactive. You need to establish the decision-making process, engage the right stakeholders, and have them involved at the right time in the process so that you can have a thorough conversation all the way through. But we, as your consultants, have to execute day in and day out. That's an important part of the process. It's great to have a plan or to have the right players, but you have to be able to execute. One of the things that we work with not only with the SBC, but the consultants, is to make sure there's a project ego, right? We're not looking to bring on a designer for you that's looking for a showcase piece for their portfolio, right? We want a designer that's going to be in the trenches with you, rowing in the same direction to help Medfield get from where they were to where they want to be with a replacement to this building, with whatever the solution is that this committee decides is the right decision. But we bring accountability. We're fair but firm, right? We're transparent, and if you check any of our references from the top down, from designers, contractors, or the owners, you'll see that people like working with Vertex because we hold everybody to the same metric, because we all work together to the end result. Next slide. An example of that is, what does that look like? So this is looking at, establishing those groups, right? So there are many stakeholders. This is a large endeavor. There are stakeholders in the town, there are stakeholders in the school user groups, there are stakeholders in the police and fire department where we are today. There's many people that have a hand in developing the ultimate solution. So we work with the building committee to establish what is the right groups in town, when do we need to meet with them, what's the frequency, when in the process is important. If you ask everybody up front, you're not going to get the right answer. You have to have the right information in front of them, so you ask informed questions, so they give you informed information back. And so we'll work with you to develop that process. Next slide. Some of you that were involved in the prior go-around may have seen, or this may look familiar. This is the MSBA process. And, the acronyms is alphabet soup. PDP, PSR, SD, right? And so PDP is the first stage. That's preliminary design program. But where you are right now is hiring an OPM. After that, you're gonna hire a designer. As I talked about the right team, you wanna also have a designer that can speak to the community and knows school construction on tight sites. That takes months. It'll take you 3 to 4 months because of the way the MSPA process goes, so you won't really have a designer on board till towards the end of the summer, just because of the nature of their system. So you really wanna hit the ground running in the summer. We would love to work with you to have touch bases with the community, with your OPM, before we break for summer, right? And so that's what we can do to help you kind of get the ball rolling. But overall, there's a lot of value in what's already been done in the prior phases, right? There are existing conditions that were done for Dale Street and can be reused and refreshed, right? The new consultants have to validate and make sure no codes have changed or things are accurate to the right degree of which they needed to be investigated, especially if you're taking a deeper dive on ad renos versus new construction. The educational program, a lot of work was done by the administration before, and that leadership is still here today, and unless there are major changes in the way education is delivered in Medfield, there's a good base there for you to refresh and move forward. You've eliminated some of the things that took a lot of time on the prior study, which is in a separate enrollment, right? You looked at whether you would take on other grades here. That decision has been made by this committee. You've also decided that you're staying at the Dale site, so you're not looking at other campuses in town, right? So that allows you to really focus in. But there are other factors in this site, which we'll get to in later slides, that need to be considered too. But based on that, I think that a typical MSBA feasibility cycle takes anywhere from a year and a half to 2.5 years, so 18 months to 2.5 years. I think you can do this within less than 20 months. I think that's very realistic based on the factors that I understand to be true in Medfield and the work that you've already done to kind of gain the exit polls, right? The work that this committee has done after the last vote to really understand the feedback of the public is an important foundation that the designers and your OPMs will need to take forward, right? So there's a lot of work that's been done that could be carried forward. The red box in the middle I'm going to talk about a little bit later, which is, where the lost project struggled, which is after the feasibility study decision was made, there was differing opinions in town, right? And the project went all the way forward to a funding vote and ultimately came up short, right? So people at town meeting always want to have a say in the process. The MSBA will not let you take a vote before that town meeting funding. So this cannot be a vote, right? But lining up when the school building committee wants to make a recommendation with your upcoming May 2027 town meeting is an important goal, I think, for this committee to consider. It allows you to go to that town meeting and say, we're ready to make a recommendation. Come to our meeting in parallel, the following week, plus or minus of when that is, and understand the why, right? And that point allows you to know that you've made the decision, you have the majority of the support that the public has, and you can then move forward for the next 8 months and lead to the final funding vote that'll ultimately come back to the taxpayers at that point when it's a fully baked program. All along the way, communication and public engagement is a clear and transparent process. We're showing these yellow stars here along the way, so kind of when you come back in the fall, kind of having those monthly touch bases with the public, show them where you are in the process. What is it they want to get out of a new project? You can't just assume that people that voted yes before are going to vote yes now, right? You have to understand what motivated them before and what will motivate them now, right? So there's a lot of work for this building committee to think about as you move forward. Kate's going to talk to you about the next slide, about the granularity of how we get there.
So the schedule approach during design, we have multiple schedules that we work off of for different audiences. So the schedule on the bottom left-hand side is a high-level schedule that lays out the project over the duration of a few years. So someone could take a quick look at this, see the approvals that are needed, see when the project's going through permitting, different phases of design, and how long the construction is anticipated to be. So this is kind of the high level that we bring to the towns and the building committee. But then we also have the deeper level, which is at the top right. So that breaks down the schematic design, lays out how many days, the durations for each one of these individual activities, lining up to when we need approvals. And we definitely want to build in enough time to get approvals to keep the momentum going of the project. And then the bottom right-hand schedule is all the same information, but just built in, broken down by week. And so we like to have clear agendas for every single meeting that we go into, because we need to keep driving the project and have outcomes to push the project forward. So we look at this at a high level, but then what do we need to accomplish during the week or during the month to line the project up to keep moving, and also make sure we build in enough time for the building committee to review the phases and vet any VE or make any decisions they need to through the duration. cost control, total project budget management. So we work to develop the soft costs and identify all the risks that are, or potential risks throughout the project, which includes hazmat, contingencies, builder's risk, moving swing space, construction testing, admin costs. So on the left-hand side, you can't see, but the column outlines all of these potential risks we have. And then as the columns go across, that is kind of a checkpoint as to where we are and how much money is in each line item. So you can take this one spreadsheet and see where the budget falls and if money has moved from one bucket to another, which all feeds down into the bottom line of the total project budget. This is something that informs our total project budget once we get a little bit later on, which Mary will talk through. But this is just making sure that we're identifying all the risks as we work through.
I should note in the upper left-hand corner, I tried to put Q1, Q2, kind of questions they tie to. They're not exact, right? We span a lot of answers with a lot of these questions, but sometimes you'll see Q1, Q2, whatever at the upper left-hand corner. So that's what that's for. Next slide. So you asked us to talk about cost, right? And I can't talk about cost without being holistic, right? And where you were previously and where you're headed now, right? And so the reality is the cost of construction has only risen dramatically since Medfield proposed the last project. So the ultimate solution will likely cost more money, or will cost more money ultimately than where you were before. Your pre-project, your earlier project was presented pre-pandemic escalation. And so Medfield back in, was scheduled to break ground in kind of 2022, started 2023, was earmarked at $673 a square foot. And that was above the median average at that particular point. Since that time in 2020, it slowed way down when we're in the middle of COVID, but then it throttled and was 8.5% inflation, then 10.5%, as you can see in the chart, then 6%. And then only last year did it start to return to normal at 3%, but that's compounding 30% on top of what you guys had envisioned as what the cost of the building would be. We all, as an industry, have to deal with that, right? And so if you look at the chart, you'll see in the earlier years here, and I'm gonna stand just because it's easier. If you look at the earlier chart, it was pretty flat, right? We were going along, and we hit COVID, and it tips. And it tips hard, and everybody in the state is dealing with this. And you're taking projects that used to be $400 and $500, and all the new jobs are $700, $800, $900, and $1,000 a square foot for a project. Astounding. You all and we have to explain that to the public. They're all going to say, you're crazy. But the facts don't lie. These are all the projects that are going through the pipeline. The data is there. Okay, so you have to educate the public that the cost of doing building is not what you thought it was. It's not building, I mean, come on, even when you do additions on your house, it costs way more than you thought it was a few years ago. Those of us that are renovating bathrooms or things like that. It's astounding what we're paying for construction dollars, but it's the reality of what's out there. What Vertex does and what we do that's different is we attack cost early on. We know that's important. We work for municipalities where we are building a legacy to hire me for this job and the next and the next and the next. Right? We've done that in Walpole and Wellesley and all these other towns where we've done their police or their fire or their schools, because we know we're trying to help them get the lowest cost dollar because they want to get to the next job. You have that same challenge with the park and rec building and the other needs that are in town. So that's an important gauntlet for this committee to run through to make sure we're being cost conscious. What Vertex does and what I, leading the group, I'm very proud of it, the lowest dollars per square foot. So in Hopkinton, we, as George and I said, we're running two projects simultaneously, one through the MSBA, one not through the MSBA. We knew that we had to get the first project down low so they could afford the second project. Leveraging all the benefits of the MSBA program that we could, we maximized the overall dollar value of that project. But instead of just waiting for establishing placeholders for budgets, we forced the committee to have the informed conversation early on about what are the finishes in the building? What does the building look like in feasibility? Pulling those conversations forward that usually happen much later in the overall process. What that does is allows us to bring a lower cost dollar value to town meeting, but not stop there. We worked with Hopkinton even after the town meeting vote and drove the cost down based on their decisions and what they wanted their building ultimately to look like because they knew they had other needs in town. Ultimately, in August of last year, that led to the Hopkinton Charleswood project bid. This looks a little, does this look fuzzy back there to you guys too, or could you read the screen? $599 a square foot, $599. Look where that is compared to every other project in the pipeline, the absolute lowest. We followed up with Situate, low bid, $737, with the lowest grouping with all the other ones. Orange means it's already bid, blue means it's in progress, not yet bid yet. Vertex is at the forefront of driving costs down for the benefit of the towns based on the directions you guys give us. We're not stopping there. I'm also working in Rentham right now. Rentham is right here, and Marlboro, which is another Vertex job, not mine, right there. Those are projects that Rentham was submitted to the MSBA last week, and that's a locked-in price at $812 a square foot that they chose to go forward with. Right, so we're helping committees make the decisions ahead of time how to stretch their dollars. Every one of these towns has multiple projects out there that need to be considered, and so we'll help you have those conversations. Ultimately, you are making all the decisions on the scope and schedule that's in that budget. We'll help give you the information, though. Next slide. So these are the recent jobs in the MSBA, and this is a complicated one. And I'm going to stand if people don't mind. I think I'll talk loud enough, and the mic will pick me up. These are recent jobs in the MSBA. The MSBA, those of you who were around back on the last project, it's confusing. Okay, and the MSBA has reimbursements and they have caps and exclusions, and I'll explain all of that to you, later on if you have questions about it. But ultimately, you start with a base rate with your socioeconomic demographic factors, and then from there you get rated how well you already maintained your school buildings. They'll tell you that score later. And then you can get incentive points for sustainability goals if you're choosing to go there. And based on prior town meeting votes about being green, I think you're likely going for that 4%. So then that gets you to your funding rate that ends up in your funding agreement. That is your ceiling. That is your ceiling. When you factor in all the ineligible scope and the effective caps and all the various things that are necessary in many of these projects, you drop off from there and you have a difference from the delta of the effective rate to the funding rate. And so most projects drop 15 to 20 to 33% in the case of Salem High School. So in the last 10 projects that went through the MSBA, the average was a 17.3% drop. The last couple of Vertex projects, which is the middle high school in Millis that I was involved in, and then Situate and Hopkinton, we were at 10.8. So that's a 6.5% difference, right? Those are informed decisions that I led the committee through, and they're making the decisions, but I'm giving you the data to help you make those decisions and decide what is the right choice for Medfield, because nobody wants to just have the lowest cost, right? There's trade-off values with all of these, but we can help you have the conversations to drive those costs down. In the case of Millis, it was an ad renovation, and I was able to deliver them the absolute best delta in all projects at the MSBA of 4.5%. Right? We were able to stick with the program. They chose an ad reno for them, which I'll get to later in one of the case studies. Next slide. How we get there. Target the dollars per square foot. One of the benefits of where you are today is just in January of this year, the MSBA upped the dollars per square foot. So it's now at $678. Obviously, big gap from where we landed at Hopkinton, and the Situate one was $737. So much closer to that $678. So try and get as close as you can. Limit extraneous site costs like turf fields or excessive site circulation or things that are categorically ineligible. If you choose a new building versus an ad reno, you could pick a design bid build, maybe save 5 to 10% premiums, eliminate ineligible costs or minimize them as much as possible, such as swing space, really keeping an eye on the swing space costs. And then ultimately, caps. One of the other benefits of the January is the MSBA, for the first time in 15 years, increased the FF&E and technology reimbursement. They hadn't changed that in 15 years, so that is a betterment that you guys will have the benefit of. Next slide. Mary's going to talk a little about budgets.
So, OPM project accounting, what is it? For us, it's a set of best practices that we put in place on all of our projects to keep the project team, the whole team, informed and focused on the financial health of your project. So, in other words, it's not just me reporting, it's me making sure we bring everybody in and keep people focused at all times. Every month, we review all of the vendor invoices that come in against the contracts that we have in place in the budget, and then provide a package of all these invoices and updated budget reports that reflect those costs and invoices, and make our recommendation to the building committee for payment. Our systems that we use internally, they're designed to fully support the MSBA process, their requirements for budget reporting, monthly OPM reporting, cost tracking, and usage of contingency. My team will enter all of your MSBA reimbursement requests into the ProPay system, and then review all the audit results that come back to us from the MSBA. In terms of experience, you see here we've, well over $1.6 billion in costs that we've packaged up, submitted, and reviewed. And then we're pushing 70 different projects now, project to date. So we've got a lot of experience with this. Just to put it simply, we watch your money. We report transparently and help maximize your reimbursement. When we're effective and successful at doing that, we're keeping money flowing back into the project. Next slide, please. So obviously our diligence every month is in close, carefully and closely managing costs, watching costs, focusing on cost control. But I also want to point out that the diligence that we have here contributes to maximizing your effective reimbursement rate. So we know it's critically important that we post every invoice line, every dollar in the right place, in the right budget line, because it doesn't have to just be eligible. There needs to be enough of an eligible grant in a particular budget line to support that for that reimbursement. Second, it's critically important to anticipate what budget transfers might be needed to make sure that the appropriate budget categories are funded. So we're aggressive around making sure that we fill out the right paperwork with the MSBA in terms of budget transfers and provide the right information and backup so that we quickly can find out and get a ruling on, costs that are eligible or not. And then lastly, every month that we submit a reimbursement request, we receive a detailed report on every dollar back from the auditors. And we'll take a look at anything that comes back as ineligible and look at it. Is there more information we could provide? Is there something else that's missing? Are we surprised that it wasn't reimbursed? And then we'll identify some next steps, if there are any, that we can have that cost reconsidered. It's not glamorous, but as I always say, it's it's the base hits that win games. It's these consistent small steps that help to maximize your effective reimbursement.
Slide. So a couple of recent projects dealing on, not necessarily recent, but MSBA projects that are occupied campuses, right? So it's often the case that there are many schools or multiple municipal buildings on a given campus, right? And so we have to be a good steward of delivering a construction project, but being respectful of everything that goes around us and not affect their operations. And so these are a couple examples. You may recognize the bottom left here, which is Millis. And so Millis is, we built a new Clyde Brown Elementary School on the hillside at the time, sandwiched in between the existing Clyde Brown, the middle high school, all the athletic fields in town, town hall, senior center up here, and had direct access for contractors, and we were able to thread the needle and keep everything up and running without impacting that, and really, as well as delivering the construction while education is going on in very close proximity to them and delivering the site itself. So we understand how to work on tight sites with multiple buildings. Swing space is going to be an important conversation on this campus, right? And so I've personally looked at swing space on many different angles. Whether it's internal swing space. In the town of Wellesley, we looked at rentals, we looked at off-site swing space. Ultimately, they decided to use existing capacity they had within the school system based on declining enrollment there. We used swing space there, but that's part of the conversation. In this case, in Natick over here, this was a site that's penned in by wetlands on all sides with one main road in and only an emergency access out on the back side with 2 schools. In feasibility study, we had to look at 22 different configurations on this one little site of how can you build the building and what are the trade-offs with the temporary condition and the permanent condition and what's in the best interest of the town long term. Ultimately, we ended up building a building in phases where we built 80% of the building 20 feet off. You might not be able to see it here, but this dashed line in red is the existing building, 20 feet off the face of the building. Opened the new middle school, moved them in, demolished the old school, and then built the athletic wing and the athletic fields on the way out the door. So There are ways to do it on tight sites. It takes longer, it takes more dollars and phasing costs, but ultimately you can always build no matter what the site's in. Kate's going to talk about her experience at Walpole.
So this is the Walpole Middle School project. The Bird Middle School was right in the middle here, and this is the new building that went around it. It looks like it's a big site, but it actually has a huge grade change going from east to west with the playing fields that are for the varsity and high school. So initially we were not allowed to touch the playing field, so we ended up having to build the new building about 50 feet off of the old building. The orange that goes around is a construction fence. So we did an early release package to cut in the contractor entrance to get to the new building site. We wanted to keep the construction traffic away from the student traffic. And we also, when we got the CM, this was CM at risk and this is new construction. So when we got the CM on board, they suggested building out a pedestrian path into a temporary bus exit road. So we had to reconfigure all the traffic around this school for construction. And during the design phase, we were over budget. We needed to go through the VE process. This was right after COVID. So initially, we were not supposed to be touching any of the fields, but the CM came to us and said that you could save $200,000 if you stockpile soil on the site that then could give infill the cut that happened previously. So we did actually take over a section of the fields to stockpile soil and save the project $200,000 to keep some program space in the building. The top is the Walpole High School project. This is an ad renovation project that is currently in phase 3. So there's site work ongoing. There's 4 phases, including some A and B phases. So we added a new parking lot. That was the first phase that led out to the stadium. We're reconfiguring the traffic pattern around the campus. We added a field house addition because the most important thing for the school was to add program space. We wanted to do that as cheaply as we could. So we added an addition, and then we're building out the existing gym and switching program around in the school currently. So this is occupied construction. We're currently in phase 3, phase 4, which is building out. We're moving the music to the new gym, and then building out the music suite. So we have to work around students constantly in this building. It's a very active site.
So this picture right here on the bottom, that is the Hopkins Lower Middle School. That's where I'm currently working. That is an addition on the left-hand side, and then we're actually renovating part of the middle of the existing building. And then right now we're going through phase 3, which is the far right-hand side actually of that building. That's one way in, one way out, so that's a loop. So what you do most of our projects are on occupied school campuses. And it's extremely important to develop, a safe separation between the construction zone and our school zone. We don't want to, impact any of the bus drop-offs or traffic, during arrival and dismissal. One thing we like to implement is blackout hours, which we don't allow any construction vehicles from entering or exiting the site at any given time. So whether that's an hour in the morning, hour in the afternoon, items along those natures. Another thing we want to do is obviously establish a clear line of communication between myself and the school liaison, as well as the principal and facilities director. And then, excuse me, we wanted to ensure continuity with the building operations. So whether it's a new build or an ad reno, making sure that whatever's being tied into the existing building or the new building isn't affected by something else. So we want to make sure we coordinate with the police and fire, as well as the AHJs when we have to do connections for tie-ins for fire alarm systems, sewer, power, any of those type of shutoffs. We got to make sure that we coordinate and have that clear line of communications with the AHJs and the police and fire. Next slide, please. So right here we talk about cost control and document review. So during constructability review, it's extremely important to keep the project costs at the forefront. Make sure that the thorough review of the drawings and specifications. Make sure that prior comments that were made previously were picked up. Sometimes you'll realize that you made a prior comment and it wasn't picked up in this new set of drawings. So you want to make sure that those are picked up as you go along. Make sure that includes your value engineering and that there's a clear contract language. Clear contract language will help avoid change orders down the road. And then using our lessons learned, you can't see on the bottom, but over 20 plus school renovations and 60 plus ARP projects. So just this team alone, we have a lot of lessons learned that we take from our previous projects and allow us to keep an eye on these potential change orders and help mitigate them if they come up during construction.
We like to take a proactive approach to the transition process, and one of the tools we use to do that is this transition schedule. And each of those colors represents a different group of stakeholders on the project, including the school, construction activities, anything related to the move, technology, or the furniture. Next slide. So we manage that transition process for the move, technology, and FF&E, going through the procurement, purchasing, as well as installing and making it ready and usable on the first day of school in the new space. We use this transition process to create a seamless transition for the teachers, the students, as well as the entire community. Next slide.
Let's get a time check. I know we got a late start. I want to know how much time we have left.
It is 4:40, and we do have a 5 o'clock, so.
Tell me what we have left.
We said 45 minutes, but we got a few late starts with this, so let's go to 4:50, that would be 10 minutes.
So, you asked about CM at risk versus design bid build. Ultimately, we're unlike our competitors that just pick CM at risk because it's the easy route. We let the project dictate it, right? So if you're going with an ad reno, we'd certainly recommend CM at risk because there's pre-planning, there's decent knowledge you need to have ahead of time, working with the educators to make sure the school is running. If you choose a new build, you have the option of both, depending on the complexity of it. But you can save 5 to 10% with going with a GC bid if you have a new build. Next slide. Let's just skip through this, George. So this is the Rake-In report where George does a daily report that goes out to the people. If you do a GC bid, our quality control gets ratcheted up because you don't have a CM washing your back, so we have to fill that void. So our effort in CA can be higher with a GC bid because they're driven by finishing fast, and fast doesn't always mean quality, right? So that's one of the things we have to fill the void with. Next slide. So what you've asked us to really focus on today is communications, right? And so that's the key to success for this overall project. Developing a strategy to educate the community and the boards, right? Providing multiple opportunities for feedback to address concerns. You've already done a lot of that, right? But everyone's always going to show up at town meeting and say, nobody asked me, right? And so you have to try and put that out there. You guys do a great job with the website. You post your meetings, you post your packets. The information's out there, right? And that's all you can really put out there in terms of the end of the line. But there's important things to address for the community, right? We know what they obviously are going to be. Cost to the taxpayers. Campus configuration. You got to deal with park and rec, schools, and fields on this combined campus. Impacts to construction, both at Memorial and Dale. Impacts to the fields. You're already doing an excellent job on an accessible and transparent communication on the website. Let's keep that going. Next slide. But really, to get to a funding vote, you have to understand what the residents want from the project, right? What they wanted 5 years ago is different than what they want today, right? There are a lot of different factors here. We're staying on the same site. It may look different to the people that want the project today than it did 5 years ago, right? So you really need to engage the public early and often in that PDP phase to understand the proposed solutions and why. But ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, the MSBA will not let the town meeting take a vote ahead of time, but really trying to line up the PSR decision close to that town meeting so you have the attention of the people, right? That you tell them, like, now is your chance. Come talk to the building committee. The decision is being made now. Right? That happens 8 months before the actual vote that actually sets everything in motion as the final. That's a key point for this committee to focus on. Again, transparent process. You're doing a great job with community engagement. Zoom meetings are important. Social media, a combination of all that will be important successes on this project. George.
So communication with the construction phase, not only just with the school, but also with the abutters. It's a key component to communicate with the neighboring residents, day-to-day activities, and what I do is I build a relationship with them. A lot of them will have my personal number as well as my email address. A lot of times they can just email me a message. I can put out the fire before it spreads. The fire is not usually burning, it's just smoldering. The bottom left-hand side, that's actually me in Westwood. I had the chance to teach a 4th grade class about renewable energy. They have geothermal and photovoltaics at their school. So my wife's a teacher, so I got to play teacher for the day myself and do a little teaching. So Vertex focuses not only on building schools, but also inspiring generations to come.
Thanks, George. We do that. We offer that in all of our projects, and we'll offer it to Medfield as well. These are jobs that I was involved in. Next slide. You asked the complex project, the question about funding votes, right? And what happens with projects that don't pass. So I'll first start by saying I've done this before. Right, so I was hired on the Hopkinton Center project after they had a failed vote for the Hopkinton School where they tried to move it from one location to another. and also did redistricting. That did not go over so well with that project. They had a new committee, a lot of similarities to your process here, where the committee was replaced, transparent process, bring in new consultants. We got on board there and helped lead a successful project that ultimately picked a third location, not back in the original location, but yet another location in town where that school ended up being an early pre-K to 1. We did such a good job on that project that they've hired us for 2 successful projects after that, because they understand that we know how to work through challenging projects. Dedham had a lot of similarities to the Medfield in the sense that they had originally proposed the PSR solution that met resistance. There was a citizens petition over there where they had grade enrollment. They combined 2 schools into one. One neighborhood was having their school closed. That neighborhood protested. Ultimately, the school building committee decided they would listen to that committee and redid their vote. Then moved forward with just having a vote at that existing site with the existing school. But unfortunately, that was not going to be successful for them. They still had enough single-purpose no voters that didn't like the cost, didn't like the building the way it looked, wanted to add rentals, all these other various things. So a building committee tried to respond to the public, but the public still did not have the confidence in that project to move forward, and that ultimately failed at a ballot vote. Stoughton High School passed a town meeting. It was a neighborhood school, so only dealt with a certain subset in town, failed at the ballot vote narrowly, but the MSBA allowed the building committee to work with them to reduce some costs. You couldn't change any scope. The funding agreement was locked in, but you could take cost out of the project. They flipped from a CM to a GC and made some other cost reductions. Ultimately slowed down, took another 6 months to re-educate the voters, found out that a lot of the voters in that district, English speaking was not their first language, so Portuguese was. So that we changed the approach to go where the people are, changed the flyers to Portuguese, reached out to them, had interpreters, went to the people that were impacted by that project, and went back and re-voted not only the ballot, but town meeting, and collected both successful votes. So an example of, of how to bring a project back from the brink. One more slide, and I'll kind of wrap up. This is just, you asked us how to help an owner that may make a bad decision. In the town of Millis, next door, they were getting sticker shock at the PDP. It came in at 130 plus million for all the various options. They wanted to spend $50 million. They had a number in their head. But then they failed their override. Both town and school went for a combined override of only $1.3 million. They were terrified. They wanted to shut the job down. I said, you guys can do whatever you want. We're here to support you. But at the end of the day, you have to explain to the taxpayers why you shut it down and all the pending upgrades that are needed today. They had windows with water coming in. They have leaks coming in the roof. If you send us all home, you've still got to spend millions of dollars the first year. So why don't you let us spend time doing a 10-year capital plan, which we did, and showed that the reality is that they were going to spend $40+ million over the next 10 years alone, and it didn't even address the things that they asked the MSBA to help with. Ultimately, we worked with a ladder of options with renos only, ORAD renos, and the new, and we picked the best value. Ultimately, they came back to the option they originally liked, and we lowered the overall cost to $125 million. Biggest thing that ever went through in that town by 3 times. And ultimately, we went on a value vote, and they passed that successfully. So I think I'll wrap up my last minute. One more slide, just the why. You can skip past that. That's the graphic we showed people. This is just the fact that it's a clean slate at the end of the day. You can't assume that people that voted yes last time will vote yes this time. You have a different site, different factors, different people. You got to understand what motivates them today. Listening to the registers, having desired outcomes. Again, that project ego, everybody in this meeting working together, and then trying to line up the information with when people are paying attention, right? And that's the key to success here. And then just, you can skip past this. And in closing, I hope in my fast talking, I've proven to you why Vertex is a proven leader. We have the expertise for school construction. I know the MSBA process inside and out. We have a proven track record. If you've checked any of our references, there's a reason they hire us multiple times again and again and again. We're collaborative, we're proactive. 85% of our business is repeat business. It's not decam evals, it's the references of people like you that want to work with us again. And so with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, and that was quick talking. Nice job. So we're kind of out of time, so unless anyone has a immediate question, a lot of information. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. It was a pleasure to have you all here, and we will be getting back to you as soon as we finish all our scoring, etc.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
really
for your
nice
time.
job.
Appreciate working through technical difficulties.
So we'll get started if everyone's ready.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here with you. We are PMA consultants. We're here, so you already know who we are and seen our qualifications. Try to speak a little bit to what you don't see or what's not immediately obvious in our qualifications package. So we are an entirely local team. We're all native to Massachusetts. We have worked together, in some cases, 2 decades. I'd like to think we're a relatively young team, but we do have 75 years of combined experience. 54 of those years have been with PMA, just from the 4 of us up here, and then the other 2 that are on the team bring another couple decades of construction experience. We are OPMs and OPMs only. We are not designers converted. We don't do commissioning. We just do OPM work. So every project that you see in our resume list is something we performed as OPMs. We've also never been acquired, and we've never acquired another firm. So those projects have been performed by PMA people during their time as PMA employees. Well, we bring this up. So the people I have here with me, we have Seamus O'Connor. Seamus is one of our project managers. To my right, Sean Burke, one of our project executives, and Mitch Miller, one of our project directors. My name is Chad Crittenden. I'm an executive director with PMA Consultants. And with that, I will turn it over to...
I'll take it from here, Chad.
Thank you.
So question 1, slide 5, what differentiates your firm and the specific project team from other OPMs? So Chad kind of hit on that a little bit, but to go into a little more detail, our people, our strong leadership, and our communication. I think you'll hear communication as a theme tonight. Those are things that we value here at PMA. As Chad mentioned, we're only an OPM. We have expertise with a fully dedicated on-site team that remains consistent throughout the project from start to finish. So there will be no mix-up here. We'll be the team from design all the way through closeout. We also provide PMA specialization in claims, risk management, and scheduling. We offer an internal bench, so those are resources both locally and nationally at PMA that we have on staff. Some of the things that separate us too is our proven success on our complex projects, including addition renovations, and those prove to our repeat clients that we can be a trusted advisor in those situations. Another thing that stands out about PMA is a unique experience that we were solely chosen OPM, the only one that we know of, for an MSBA project, the Essex Tech project, so we're directly contracted with the MSBA. We also bring experience navigating districts through failed votes as well. Question 2 on slide 7. Describe your methodology for keeping MSBA projects on schedule and within budget from feasibility through construction. Please explain how you will use the feasibility study to help offset costs in this process. So our approach keeps projects on schedule and within budget. We start this by launching right away. We actually already have a designer RFS ready to go. There's one drafted up. There's obviously some input there from the town that would have to go into it, but we do have a draft ready there, so we like to hit the ground running. We use our relationships that we have with the design firms in the area and throughout the MSBA process to help limit constraints on the feasibility schedule. We work with them to close in the schedule when we can, and therefore increase some cost savings, which we'll see on the next slide when we get there. But you know, since Medfield already has a previous feasibility study, we feel like we can leverage that as well with our relationships with designers to really accelerate the schedule and feasibility. So, I know something's going on in the background, sorry. On slide 9, you'll see a sample schedule that we created for this project. What you should really pay attention to is the blue and the black bars, and those are some areas that we feel we can compress this schedule to help save around $6.75 million during the duration of this project in Medfield. Of course, it's pending buy-in from the project team, and as well as hitting NBA submittal and board dates as well. Looks like we're working a little bit over here.
There we go.
So on the next slide, you'll see an example of a project cash flow. So we work with the budget and the cash flow from the beginning. The cash flow can help you with your borrowing needs, depending on the town's borrowing method. And we also do this during the duration of the project to closely track the financials and help forecast project costs as needed. This, as well as what you'll see in the next slide, the budget summary. So in the budget, we track every cost, every dollar that goes on the life cycle of the project here. This is a good kind of cliff notes on this summary sheet. It has, build to date as well as percent complete of the project. Both of these, the forecasting cash flow as well as the budget, will go to the MSBA in the monthly reports that we'll perform for the town, as well as the pro-pay submissions that we'll perform for the town. And
So our case study on cost savings is the Carver Elementary School, not too far away. So they were invited back into the MSBA pipeline in 2014, and their second go-around. They were initially invited in 2007. So in 2007, they were looking at an ad rental project. They had a completely different project team, different OPM, different architect. Unfortunately, the community did not support that project moving forward, so they did have to pull from the pipeline after a couple of attempts to secure funding. We came on board in the 2014 round and went back through their study. We were able to use a lot of the information. We took it from feasibility through schematic in just 11 months, which saved them a ton of money, as you know, the MSBA does not reimburse the second round of feasibility and schematic, so it keeps costs well down. In spite of that, it wasn't the same project. We ended up actually coming up with a new build scenario. I think one of the missteps the first time around was maybe a misjudge on community sentiment about their existing building. So they thought that there would be a strong drive to keep that kind of historic fabric in the community. When we started our outreach activities, we realized quickly that wasn't necessarily the case, and if we could identify and implement a new construction option that had less impacts to staff and students during construction, the community was 100% behind it. So we did put that to vote in December of 2015. It passed 1,724 to 502, so a 3.5 to 1 margin. So overwhelming. Carver, to this day, is one of the very few projects that was actually completed within the MSBA cost per square foot caps, and one of the lowest cost per square foot elementary schools since that time.
So question 3 is about consistency and leadership. So for this team here, we average 14 years at PMA, and we pride ourselves on not only tenure of people, but also hiring. We hire a lot of interns out of college and co-ops, and we try to bring them on and train them. We don't buy out other companies. We don't bring on, that's not how we bring our staff on. We try to start early and get people and grow them the right way, and we feel that by doing that, they really feel valued at PMA and they'll stay here a long time. So we have a pretty good track record of that. In addition, we don't really do the, we present someone and then give you a different team. The team that we present now is the team that you can expect to see and to be working on this project. And when you show up on a job trailer, you'll see us there. We've all worked on multiple projects together. We enjoy working together. We hang out outside of work as well. So our goal here is to really form a great team, and we extend that to the ownership, the design team, and the contractor as well. We're not the type of firm that kind of points fingers and tries to play that blame game. It's really about forming a cohesive team and having everyone on the same page about building a building and putting a new school together for this town. So we've done that in the past, and we hope to be able to do it for Medfield. Again, this is our staff, our prime staff that's on this team here. We have all worked together. Just other things to note out that we, if someone can't cover a meeting, someone else on this team will be there to cover it for them. We have a project team email, so if you email, our one email address goes to everybody on the team. So people are staying up to date, even if they're not day-to-day on the project. We'll have more people in PMA informed about what's going on, just in case someone needs to step in. One of the other questions you asked about is how to maximize MSBA reimbursement. And with this question, there's a lot of ways to do it, which you can talk about, but there really is no silver bullet. There's no OPM firm that knows how to get more money out of the MSBA than anyone. It just doesn't happen. The MSBA has a very rigid system, and we know how to work the system, but there's no really tricks or ways to get more money out of them. But I mean, that being said, we do know that from the last time you were in there, we've seen some increases, like in the eligible cost has gone up per square foot. The FF&E finally has gone up. I think that was at $2,400 for 12 or 15 years. Design fees are now capped at the construction cost reimbursable for square footage, and then site has gone up. So we look at all the different options, and as we go from PDP to PSR to SD, we're going to use the MSBA Form 3011 to show you what your anticipated grant would be for every different scenario all the way through. It's really about transparency to the district to let you know what a reasonable amount of money for a grant would be, so that can be messaged to the community so you can start gaining support early on. Sometimes I think districts we find they wait a little bit too long to start talking about money, and that's typically one of the biggest questions, and we'd like to get ahead of that and talk about it up front. But that being said, we want to look at all the MSBA additives, the energy efficient schools. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at the best practices for maintenance and try to get you as many incentive points that make sense. We don't chase incentive points. We don't tell you that you should definitely do geothermal because the MSBA is going to give you another 3% on it. But what we'll do is work with mechanical engineers and figure out what that cost is to you so you can make the right decision for your community. I think on top of that, we want to maximize eligible square footage always. MSBA doesn't pay for anything that's ineligible, so we really want to drive down and make sure we get as much eligible square footage to minimize ineligible in that building as possible. One of the ways to do that is when you look at phasing, if this is going to be an ad reno, making sure you do it correctly to eliminate some of the costs that they wouldn't pay for, like modular trailers. If you can build your renovation first, move the kids into there, then renovate the second building, it's just, there's ways that you can end up saving. Next slide, sorry, yeah. Just to save money smartly, and don't spend money on, try not to spend money on any construction that's not going to go into a school building and to help educate children. We talked about the energy efficient and green program. So in the next slide, we work with the mechanical engineers to, we'll do this, typically it'll be done in PSR and then finalized really in the SD phase to look at all the different types of heating and cooling systems that can go into this building. Like we said, we're looking not only at the MSBA 3% grant, we're looking for the Mass Save credits, any IRA grants or anything like that, to show that sometimes, putting in a, ground source heat pump system, while it may be quote unquote the most expensive option, once you go through all the grants and then you look at the cost savings over the long term, how long this building's going to operate, it could actually be less expensive to do that. But again, we're not here to tell you that you should be putting geothermal in the building. We're here to give you the information so that you can make the right decision for your community.
All right. The next question was identifying major risks that we foresee for the project. So on to the next slide, when we looked at the project, we saw two major categories of risk for the project. One category is the early stage of the project as we build community support, try to manage costs as we march towards the local funding vote and the total project cost that we lock in once we finish SD. And then the second phase is the construction risks as we move into the construction phase and finish the project, with phasing and all that. So to dig in a little deeper into the feasibility risks, we really want to make sure that as we bring the architect on board and begin engaging the project more thoroughly, we want to make sure that the architect team and the project team and the owner are really all meshed together to make sure we're driving to make a project that will actually work for the town of Medfield. And we want to make sure that we are educating the public early and often on, public risks, stuff that has changed with the MSBA and with construction cost escalation since the last project you guys have gone through. So we really want to make sure that come vote time, everybody knows exactly what they're voting for, why they're voting for it, and why it's the best option for the town. Once we get local funding and we move into the construction phase and finish design, the concerns and the risks really kind of morph into a more practical day-to-day thing where we have to manage site logistics, site phasing, and most importantly, student safety. So as you can see, this area of where the project's going to take place is fairly congested with the police, the fire, and the Memorial School and the Dale Street School. So we really want to make sure that we coordinate everything correctly to make sure that all the schools can stay operational. Police and fire have no issues getting access to and from the site while we begin construction. And now that phase of the risk construction kind of leads into the next slide where we will talk about delivery method. So question 6 is to talk about comparing the CM at risk and design bid build phase and advantages, disadvantages, and then what, when we look at it, we could recommend for this project. So for the next slide, we actually have 3 options. So wherever you can be familiar with design bid build, which is the standard method of bidding a project, where you finish the drawings, you put it out to bid, you get the bids, and then you build it. There's another option called CM at risk, where you can bring a construction manager on earlier in the project, and they're involved way earlier in the project, typically right after we get local funding, and they're with us throughout the end. It allows us to have a construction manager on before the drawings are finished. And then we'll talk also about PMA's hybrid approach that we've been using on a couple of projects, if it fits the project, where we combine kind of the ability to do early packages with the, like a CM while we finish the drawings, but we don't take on the added costs potential of bringing on a CM. So this table kind of highlights the major pros and cons and advantages and disadvantages of the three different options. The PMA team here today has done multiple projects with all three different kinds of delivery methods, so we're familiar with all of them. The second portion of the question talked about recommendations, and we can only say right now that we can't give you guys a good recommendation right now. If there's too many options in the air, we don't know exactly what the project's going to be, whether it's going to be ad reno. We don't know what the soil conditions are like, so we really can't give a thoughtful option for that. But we know once we get into design, once we select the preferred solution that works with the ed plan and the town, then we'll be going through and have several meetings to discuss the pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages of all these options and see what we can bring forward.
I guess likely a different recommendation for the ad reno versus the new construction options comes down to. So a little bit of work to do before we get to that decision point.
Yep, for sure. I'm going to jump in and talk about question 7, which was describing and maintaining communication strategies, as well as building that approach leading up to a town meeting vote. So on slide 25, one of our strategies that we have internally, which I've already mentioned, is we value our internal communication, but we also value external communication with the clients and the community. So that's one thing that we really bring to the table here, and we'll work with the stakeholders involved, such as the list that's shown in the slide. There are the school building committees, the school committees, school administration, public safety, abutters, and we know you already have neighborhood captains involved and outreach committees, and we're excited to get engaged with them to help bring this project out to the public some more. Our role is to provide key expertise necessary to meet the project's need. So we'll organize and attend meetings, and we'll provide project updates as necessary, monthly updates, budget updates, communication updates, whether it's email, phone, or when I get there, a website or a Facebook page or any social media. We do this by operating as an extension of the town. So we want to work seamlessly with everybody in town and be an extension of the town of Medfield to have a successful project and get the community involved as well. We do that including night and weekends too, so in text whenever you need us. On the next slide, we have multiple avenues for project communication. So on the top left, you'll see some of those, which are, as I mentioned, a website. We can do video updates, social media accounts, posters, flyers, postcards as needed for events, community forums, local community events, which we'll see further down. And then we just have some photos here of some of our PMA team out to work doing these community events as well. So some of those different methods start on the next slide, which you can see. This is an example from a project in Easton. So we had a community forum upcoming, so we created a postcard that went out to anybody on a mailing list. We were able to get those out and get communication flowing, as well as newsletters that we can create internally. Advancing to the next slide, you can see some more examples of specific postcards. So on the left side of the page, you can see an example from Berkeley that has a QR code on it. So we can create QR codes that link to our project website, so when that mailing goes out, everybody has access to it. In the middle of the page is an example of a Facebook page that we created. We can also maintain Facebook pages, create Facebook pages, whatever the town might need to get information out there. We also find it handy to upload all of the presentations as well to those pages. And then in the far right side, as we mentioned a little bit already, is tax impact. You want to start to get that information out there so we can work with the town and create a tax impact calculator that can go live when we think it's ready to go live and get that information out there. And on the website, the next slide shows an example. So we work with our in-house marketing team and media team to create specific project websites. These are very useful for housing all the documents. People miss meetings. People can't make all the school building committee meetings. So you could put the recordings up here. You could put the minutes up here. You could put the presentations up here, as well as an important section, which is FAQ. So people that want to know about the project that don't have any involvement, they go on, they can see FAQs. There's email notifications. They can sign up for any time a document's change. They can get a notification. Another form of communication we use are some videos. We worked with the superintendent of schools in Dennis Yarmouth to create a video that went onto a YouTube page and local channels down there to get communication out there to the local community about the project. We've even experienced with Facebook Live, as you can see on the right side. So this was interesting because we had somebody walking around giving a live tour, as well as people ready to answer questions that were coming in on the comment section. And then getting more into the community outreach in that critical period leading up to the vote. So this is an example of events we can tend to build community support leading to critical town votes and outreach period. So, you know, there's all the school educational meetings, there's meetings with government agencies such as Eversource and Mass Save. Then there's the markets and events that we can get into locally, as well as community forums during the feasibility phase, whether it's PDP, PSR, schematic design, to start to spread the word. And then more specifically on the next slide, you can see that we've already began to look at Medfield and what they have coming up. And we know it's the 375th anniversary, so there'll be events there that we can attend, as well as a garden club and community market that's out there. And we'll be excited to join the community to really spread the word about the upcoming projects. And here, I'm going to hand it over to Sean.
All right, so one of the questions is about debt exclusions and contributing factors. We have had some failed votes recently, so we can talk about them and how, you know, we've overcome them. We've had a lot of successful ones as well. So I think one of the things we look at with debt exclusions is making sure early on that everyone understands what the ask is going to be, and it's important to make sure we message that. You message that out to the community when you feel is appropriate. You don't want to go down a path and, speaking in PDP, and pick a project that is just too expensive to build. So we're very sensitive to that as we go along. So some up here is just a list of some of the debt exclusions that we have been successful in getting local funding with. And like Mitch said earlier, community events, we have Mark Adrian from us dressed up as the Eagle for Berkeley, getting down there trying to shake some hands and just get project information out. We're not allowed to advocate for voting, as you know, but we are allowed to provide correct information. So oftentimes it's just making sure that if somebody has incorrect information or there's incorrect information getting out there, that we provide a resource to be able to correct that and give people the proper information to make sure they make the right decision. I think we did have some lessons learned with the West Bridgewater Elementary School recently and Old Colony. And I think for the West Bridgewater School, it was just the options that they had it was too expensive for the district. And they decided early on that they wanted to make maximum impact. And by the time they went out to message to the people, it was too much. So I think a lesson learned there is just make sure early on you get more information out and that the town is going to support the project that you're going to go forward with. O'Colony, there was a smear campaign from a third-party group that for some reason or another didn't want the project to go forward with, so they had a lot of money behind them to promote a no vote for that project. But they are reconvening that, and they're going to go back up for another vote. So we're hoping to work with them to try to get some strategies and get the real information out there to try to get rid of that last-minute smear campaign that we think was detrimental to the vote progress. So with that being said, we look early on, I mean, even at this point in the project, of what is this project going to cost? So we look at code upgrades with MSBA and without MSBA reporting. MSBA, if your project doesn't fit the MSBA educational plan, they typically won't fund it. But we wouldn't sit here and tell you they're not going to give you a grant for a code upgrade because it's part of the PDP process. But 460 students in a 53,000 square foot building doesn't work by their metrics, so it's unlikely that a simple code upgrade is going to be the right fit here. You're building a building for 50 years minimum, and you want to make sure that you're not outsized, you're not too small pretty quickly. So we look at ad reno and new construction. All of this is from MSBA cost data from 2005 of buildings going to construction in late 2026 and 2027. So this will not be the cost of your building, but relative to today's dollars and relative to the square foot that we'd anticipate the building needing, this is kind of the ballpark you're in. So again, we do this at every phase, PDP, PSR, and SD, just to make sure that the people on the committee are well aware when they pick a project and go down a path that they have a good understanding of what we think that the average tax impact is going to be, and making sure that the town would support that before you move on to that next step.
This is the biggest lesson learned from Bridgewater, is I think Bridgewater, if they really took a look at the numbers, they probably would have selected a different option once they went out to the community and they heard, absolutely not, we're not gonna go for the combined highest enrollment option because that is a substantial tax impact and they just weren't gonna get community support. So I think that's something our lesson learned is starting to talk about this stuff earlier and earlier to the point of the interview here. So concept numbers, but we'll dial these in as we move through the MSBS process.
Yeah, I think the reality with that project too is even the lower enrollment number, we still don't think it would have, we don't think it would have got. There was only about a 15% difference between the tax impact and when we were hearing from members of the town, the community at the town meeting of what they thought was the appropriate amount, it wasn't even close to where they're at. So it's unfortunate, but again, good information up front, making sure that it's transparent and that you, the whole committee understands where we're at, I think is the most important, so you can make the right decision.
All right, so question number 9 asks how we've handled situations where an owner insists on something that's not in the best interest of the project. Believe it or not, this does happen. I talked about one a little bit earlier today down in Carver. So Carver, I think there was a differing opinion between the school department and really the town at large, even members of the building committee and school committee. So the school department thought, based on their outreach efforts, that the historic fabric of that existing building was something the community would not let go of, that a new construction option just wasn't in the cards. They had to do an ad reno on that building. When we went into that, that was probably the immediate hurdle that we had to overcome. So there was a lot of outreach, a lot of information gathering in Carver. Polls, just like the one you see up on the screen there, asking people like, would you rather, what's more important, the impact of staff and students and having a new building? Or do you want to maintain the historic fabric of your existing Washburn building? So that was key there. Wareham, we had some disagreement between the select board and the building committee and school committee. So the select board was adamant that it needed to be a central campus. That was not necessarily what we were hearing in the community at the committee meetings, but they were insistent. So what we ended up doing there is actually going out and, again, using social media as a poll. I mean, we can get 40,000 hits on a poll like this in a matter of 48 hours. In this case, you can see 6,247 people were reached. Not all of them voted, but that's how many get reached. Overwhelmingly selected a site that was not the central campus site. So then we reported back to the select board, said, hey, we went out to the community. This is what we found. We'd like to proceed in this direction. And they were on board.
All right, and question number 10. What do you believe are the most important actions an owner can take to ensure project success? Additionally, describe how you manage owner-driven scope pressure or stakeholder conflicts that may not align with the project goals. So the project success really starts with strong community and committee buy-in, achieved through full transparency, consistent communication. As Chad said, kind of like a poll, we like to get a pulse on this. We use community forums to get information back to the project team so we can understand these issues that might be out there and get the concerns in early to try to work as a team to resolve them. Every decision, I think a few of us have mentioned this tonight, but it's a collaborative approach. We're here to work with the community. We're here to work with all the key stakeholders to collaborate and help gather the data to make those driven decisions. So when there's an owner-driven scope pressure or stakeholder conflicts that arise, we'll kind of use that method to work through the problems together to try to get there. We can be decisive, but at times it's not our job to be decisive, so we're going to work with everybody to find and resolve those conflicts that we have. It's a two-way street, so it's not just us, it's a two-way street. The communication has to flow both ways. And yeah, we're excited to be here today, and thank you for having us, and that's what we have for the presentation.
Okay, we have a couple minutes. I have one follow-up question. You talked a lot about communication and the different things that you do. Are you for the communication team, or do you have a separate communication team that does your website and does the Facebook and everything?
We're very fortunate. So we have an excellent web team so we have an IT division based out of Chicago. So we work with our Chicago IT division. They run the website. We feed them the information. We do have a local marketing team that helps with all of our graphics, the mailers, the postcards, everything like that. Again, this team feeds them the data, the information, and then they pretty it up and put it in a format that works to be absorbed by the community. Yep. So
sometimes we're not that good with colors.
Just kind of looking.
Does anybody have any other follow-up to
All right, well, I thank you very much for coming in and sharing, and how focused you were on all the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you.
We are, most of us are the building committee, but this is an open meeting, so we have, the public is welcome, and we are taping it so that it will play for the community members, so that they can meet you.
Sorry, everyone's good.
We just lost a select board member.
Sorry about that. So, you got our 10 questions, and we're just going to hand it over to you, all right? And you have 45 minutes, and so go right ahead.
Would you mind introducing everyone that's on the committee?
Sure, we'll go quick.
I am Robert Worth.
Bob Meany.
John Messina.
Leo Brem.
Michael LaFrancesca, I'm actually not a voting member, but I'm the Director of Finance and Operations.
Jeff Marsden, Superintendent, ex officio member.
Great, thank you so much.
There's
Sure.
more?
All right, great, even better.
Meredith Chamberlain.
Bill, we met already.
Irene Murphy.
And
Teresa James.
And,
We already met.
oh, that's right. I forgot. She walked you in. She already met her. Okay, fine.
Great, thank you. It's just always nice to know who we're
Yes.
talking to, so I appreciate that. I'm Amanda Sawyer. I am the business practice leader for CHA's Boston OPM team. So I have the privilege of leading a really great team of project managers on complex and diverse projects throughout the Commonwealth, similar to the project you guys are starting. As we go through our presentation, please feel free to interrupt us, stop, ask additional questions. We did base our presentation on the questions that you gave us, but there might be, if we don't hit something exactly, please have us, clarify or elaborate on anything. So next slide. Actually, you can come back to, yes, we're going to do some intros of our team. So thank you. As I said, I'm Amanda Sawyer. I'll be the project executive on this project. So I'll be working at an overall operational capacity, guiding the team throughout the project. I am a registered architect. I have over 30 years of experience in the design and construction field, and I've worked on multiple MSBA projects. We have 2 members of our team who were unable to make it tonight, so I'm just going to do some quick introductions for them as well. Tom Getsunis, he will be the project director for the project. Tom has over 40 years experience in the design and construction industry. Before his time with CHA, he was the Public Safety Commissioner for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So when people hear public safety, they think guns and hoses, and that is not what Tom did. He did rules and regulations. So building codes, the state building inspectors worked under Tom. He was also on the Public Safety School Task Force under the Deval Patrick administration. So Tom has a huge wealth of knowledge as it relates to buildings and specifically MSBA schools. He has a lot of those under his belt as well. The other team member who was not able to join us tonight is Sydney Bragg. Sydney is a senior financial analyst with CHA. She'll be working on the project controls portion of the project. And what that means for you is the MSBA ProPay system. We're going to get into that in more detail later in the presentation. But I'm going to pass it over to Sean to kick off the rest of the team's intros.
Good evening. I'm Sean Cormier. I'll be the senior project manager, your advocate, your partner, and your main point of contact for the project. I have over 30 years of experience, like Amanda, in the construction industry, working on both public and private sector projects. And I have my MC PPO certification, my CSL license, and I look forward to this project and working with you. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Lacoche. Very excited to be here. I'm a licensed architect as well as a certified construction manager. I have over 20 years of experience in the industry. I've worked on a number of different project types, institutional, educational, and life science. And I'm very happy to be here, and I'll pass it over to Colby.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, I'm Colby Cifalillo. I have a master's in project management. I'll be the assistant project manager for this project. As an APM, I support planning, budgeting, and the coordination of all construction projects from design through completion. I work closely with clients, designers, and contractors to track costs, review documents, and make sure that all projects stay on schedule and stay within costs. Now I'll pass it over to Molly.
Good evening. My name is Molly Canfield. I am a marketing and communications specialist. I work with all of our teams at CHA on marketing communications. For the Dale Street project, I would be working with your committee on communications and outreach. I have over 10 years of experience in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, and so I would bring that to the committee to help form a strategic plan around communications and outreach.
And along with the team that you see in front of you tonight, we also have a deep bench of subject matter experts. And just one group that I want to call some attention to is our in-house cost estimating team. Our cost estimators are second to none in the Commonwealth. They're not just cost estimators, they're quantity surveyors. And if you're not familiar with the difference, quantity surveyors look at projects holistically while they are doing their estimate. So they start to look at areas where costs can be saved in the design process. So whether it's materiality, systems, or different methods of construction, we're starting to look at that really early on and how that impacts the design and the overall construction and the overall budget. So it's more than just taking quantity takeoffs and adding numbers to those. It's really more holistic. So next slide, please. The structure of our team, we really provide continuity and stability the way our teams are structured. We have a team that starts at the beginning with a project and goes all the way through completion and closeout. So some OPMs approach their projects a little differently, where they may have teams for pre-construction, they may have a separate team for bidding, they might have another team for construction. So we keep everyone on board from start to finish to really keep that stability and continuity throughout the project. We look at ourselves as an extension of your team, and we work really collaboratively from start to finish with the architect and the contractors. Next slide. Our team is locally based out of Boston. We consider ourselves, our OPM group, really a boutique group of a larger CHA umbrella. And what that means for you is you get that local personalized experience from our team. But we have the backing and the expertise of engineers and designers that we do tap into on a regular basis during our projects to get their insight. If something happens during design, or if there's some design questions that are occurring that maybe someone on our team hasn't dealt with before, we are able to call our MEP engineers and ask them for really detailed explanation of, our designers, MEP consultants are proposing this, our client has this question, can you explain this to us? And it's really kind of a neutral third party explanation that we're getting versus, the design team that has a little more of, a direction that they want to see the project go in. So it really helps us and our clients understand what decisions are being made and why you're making those decisions. So that's a really great strength. We have over 100 K through 12 projects that we have done. We have done about half of those have been MSBA projects. And I talked about Sydney Bragg earlier. She has logged in over $1.5 billion of MSBA pro pay work. So Sydney has been with us for 20 years. She has been doing this basically since the inception of MSBA. So she really understands the ins and outs. We're going to talk about that a little later as well. Our real-time cost estimating, I touched on that a bit. We'll talk about that a little more too. But again, in-house, they're based out of Boston. We're really able to collaborate with our team, and it brings that knowledge base to our clients. As far as our understanding of sustainable design, we look at the project holistically and look at life cycle costs. So during the design phase, there's, the implication of the way that the building is being designed. A lot of times we're thinking of how does that relate to construction costs. Well, we also want to think about how does that relate to maintenance costs and life cycle costs. So that's something that we think about during the design process. And Molly's going to talk a little more further into our presentation about our strategic and inclusive community engagement, which we really love to reach out to the communities that we work with and hear their thoughts. So I'm going to pass it over to Sean, and he's going to talk a little more about the MSBA process.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. And during this presentation, what we're trying to get an understanding of how well we know the MSBA process. We've been working with the MSBA for a long time. And we know the modules. We know and understand how to keep the project on schedule, working each module, keeping everybody accountable to the process within there. As soon as we come on board, we're looking at hiring an architect. How do we get to that RFS? Developing a scope for that architect so that we can go out to bid and get the right person for the project or the right entity for that project. In Module 3, we're looking at the feasibility study, and I understand one of the questions was, how can we use some of the data from the feasibility study? We haven't been able to review the feasibility study, but what we understand is, buildings. Buildings are there, they exist. That's the hard part of the project, right? Meaning the hard body of the project. That assessment's been done. We feel we can use a lot of that information from the feasibility study. Whereas the soft stuff, if you take the building and shake it out, everything that falls out would be the soft stuff. That's the stuff we really need to come back and assess. Is the curriculum still the same? Is the programming still the same? Is the education plan still the same? And how you program the building. I think that's some of the stuff that we have to go back and really look at to make sure that where the project is heading in the next phase, the schematic design, really gets laid out. Right? Once we understand what we're doing moving forward, will help shape how this building comes together, and thus get the MSBA approval to move forward with Module 4, which is getting the MSBA buy-in to get to, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, Module 5, creating the budget, right? Once we create that budget and the community involvement, which Molly's going to go through and talk about how we communicate to the community to get their buy-in and get the information out there about the project so that when we get to town vote, we can get that yes. And our job is to get to that yes so we can move forward with the follow-on modules of getting to a building that actually works for the community, improvement to the community and something we're all proud of. And I'll turn it over to Megan to talk more about the designer selection.
Thank you, Sean. So you can see on the slide that we have worked with all of the architects on this. I know Arrow Street, Habib, as well as Tepe are some of the ones that have significant MSBA experience. But we've worked with a lot of these architects, and we can be a guide in preparing the RFP that goes out to them and then working to develop their scope of work as well as make a final selection and then go through the fee negotiation and award. Amanda and I are both licensed architects, so we have that experience, and we're very familiar with the process, and so we have that knowledge and expertise as well. Next slide. So we know that Arrow Street has already created a feasibility study. So what we'll do is go through and validate the work that's already been done. I know you already have existing conditions. There's some site due diligence that's already been done and a cost model structure. So there's been work that's already been done towards the project, and we understand, that the site we want to really maximize the program. In doing this is really looking at the design, making sure that you have the flexibility to grow, and that, Sydney has a wealth of knowledge with the grants and rebates, and so she can really help guide a lot of that so that you're not leaving money on the table for the town. And then really hiring the right designer makes a very big impact in guiding the process too, and making sure that the town's goals for the program as well as for the community, that those are really valued and brought forward in the final design. And the life cycle costs are considered as well. And then moving into construction, we can guide you in that process too. There's two real paths that you can take: design, bid, build, or CM at risk. And we have extensive experience with both. So part of, our expertise will be really to help you guide you through those two options and put together packages that will really expedite the process so that you're also not losing time and money with the process. I'll turn it over to Colby for cost estimating.
Thanks, Megan. Amanda touched on our cost estimating team at the beginning of this presentation, but CHA is one of the only OPM firms in the state that have their own in-house cost estimating. Our cost estimating team has over 30 years experience that helps track costs to current market pricings. So we build and we manage full project budgets that include soft costs, hard construction costs, and all types of expenses. We also monitor contingencies, and we also regularly reconcile the budget to keep the project financially on track. The one thing that separates CHA from other firms is our cost estimating team is in our Boston office. So if we were to have any questions that come up, all we have to do is just walk across the hall and ask them. We'll get that response within seconds, which is definitely very helpful for a project because we don't have to email them and wait days to hear back. We hear back in time. So that's one thing that separates us from other firms. Now I'll pass it over to Sean. He'll talk a little bit about the MSBA reimbursement.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about Sydney already and some of the highlights here on this slide. But what Sydney brings to the table is the ability to maximize savings with the MSBA, the reimbursable aspect. She understands how to invoice the MSBA properly, with the proper backup, whether it's architect's invoice or consultant's invoice with the proper backup, or the general contractor's requisitions, if they're billing for stored materials, make sure we have the proper documentation behind that. And she's basically our double check at the end to make sure that that information is there so we don't have any issues with the MSBA moving forward. They're not asking us for something and we miss the opportunity for recouping any of those costs. All along the way and through the closeout process, we're having meetings with the MSBA, informing them of the monthly progress, and then through closeout doing the same. We're advising them and keeping the budget up to date with all that information, showing the eligible and ineligible costs so that those things don't get missed. So she's a real asset from start to finish. Next slide, thanks. So just shifting gears and looking at your project, talk about some of the risks and mitigation strategies. Driving around the site today, I got a real good handle on, what the site looks like and what we're dealing with as far as the existing structures, not really knowing what the plan is to move forward, whether it's renovation, add, demolition, how the phasing goes. That is something we're going to work with you, in full transparency to understand how this building comes together. Our process is treat this project like it's our own, meaning there are kids at school. We want to protect them from the workers. We want to protect them from the construction to make sure it's done safely. Whether it's the building has hazardous materials or not. How do we go about a plan to mitigate those risks and make sure that the site's safe? How do we separate workers from the students and the faculty? And then, again, Molly's going to talk more about communication, but through that entire process, to make that successful is all about communication, whether it's us communicating with you, the GC, or the public. And then obviously with the faculty so they can, put the students at bay. I'm working on a project right now down in Nauset where we're just finishing up the final turnover of that project. And, I think something really successful came out of that was our ability to separate the work from the students. The buildings were existing buildings that were remodeled. So there was a lot of interaction on campus with workers, construction equipment, deliveries, fire alarms going off, HVAC systems coming and going, electrical systems, shutting things off. And you know, the water supply. And we have to look at how that all affects the entire campus as a whole, right? Because we're dealing with basically this big round shape of a campus, and you know, one building's built could affect the building next to it. You know, how do we create those separations? How do we separate kids from being curious and going on to the construction site? You know, probably a little more prevalent in high school where they're a little more able than elementary, and the controls around that, you know, we have to look at that. But we're very familiar with that process and the different types of construction that we could do so that we can safely do it and keep everybody informed along the way. I'm going to hand it off to Megan to talk about some of the project delivery methods surrounding the construction process.
Thanks. I kind of touched on this a little earlier, but the design bid build process is more of the traditional path where the architect team puts together the drawings, and then once those drawings are complete, then they go out to bid to the contractor, and then once the contractor's awarded, then they start the construction process. This is more of a linear path. You know, the contractor really gets on board, you know, in the bidding process, right? Where CM at risk, the benefit there is you're bringing a contractor on much earlier in the design process. And so you're able to really get some of that feedback in constructability, some of the site logistics, some of what Sean was talking about with the different phasing. So, you know, they're a part of that process earlier, and they can really understand the project and guide it from the construction vantage point. So obviously, you know, this is something that if we were on board, we would go through the pros and cons of both, but it's just something that we have extensive experience with both of them. I'm working on a project for the MBTA that is using CM at risk, and getting the contractor on board early is great, Ashmont Mattapan, because we're able to procure some of those really long lead time items that they need for the project, which, you know, we wouldn't typically be able to do that otherwise, or it would be on the owner's responsibility instead of the contractor. So it's a huge benefit. I'll turn it over to Molly.
Great, thank you, Megan. So like I said earlier, I will be working with the building committee here on communications and outreach. Whether it's the full building committee or a subcommittee within the committee, I will work with the group to establish a strategic plan for communications and outreach. We understand that the common goal here is to get to the vote and have the community informed and understanding all the aspects of the project and making sure they have the right information. And so up on the screen are a few examples of work that I've done with Martha's Vineyard Regional High School. So I'm working with that building committee very closely right now. I just got off a call with them a little while ago. And we've worked to establish a website where folks in the community can go and get information on the project. We have project fact sheets that are out at the library, the town hall, fire station, areas where people within the community can go and grab information so they have a common stream of what is happening with the project. We've hosted community forums where folks can come, listen, learn about the project, hear about where we are in the MSBA modules, and then also ask questions. Like, not everyone understands what the MSBA is in the community, and really drilling down on that and understanding the benefit of having the MSBA involved in your project. I also work with their team at the school with social media updates. I know the Dale Street School has their little morning news session. There's ways to engage the students as well as the community members in the communications and outreach. I will pass it to Sean to talk about some successful projects that we've completed.
So I really wanted to just put on this a big yes, right? That's what we're all striving for, but I got vetoed on that one. But in all seriousness, you know, working with towns and cities, you know, is what we do, right? Working with the small towns, getting the information Molly has put together out to the masses so they understand what we're doing, why we're doing it. And, you know, hopefully driving a decision for those communities to that yes vote. That's what we work towards, right? We're working with you as a partner to get there. And then in the cities, we do the same, working with committees to appropriate the right funds for the projects, right? So a little different between cities and towns, but we have that experience. And the name of the game, I feel, is communication, right? Like we said in the previous slides, like Molly's, you know, talking about, engaging with the community through just simple things like the daily news, right? Those are the critical components to help engage a community, right? You don't want a community member coming in and say, I never heard about this, right? You want to be as proactive as you can to get out there and get in front of them. Whether it's, the farmers markets, getting out there and talking and just being available, having a website so somebody can go to and you can direct people there. We can't say, do the project, but we can give you the information to say, here's what it's about, and you make your own decision. So, getting to yes is the key. And a lot of that works into this, right? The stakeholder alignment. One of the first things we do when we come on board is understand who's involved. Like we asked for the introductions tonight. We want to know who we're talking to so we know how to direct questions or engage with you properly. Setting a RACI chart to, as part of one of our first steps allows us to understand who the decision makers are. A lot of times the committee as a whole is the decision maker, but you have people that are stronger on the committee and whatnot, and sometimes we have to keep those people in check, saying, hey, this is a committee decision, and we make it together. Now, CHA is going to advise you. We don't make the decision, but we can recommend based on what you're asking us to do. That's why I initially said I'm your partner, right? Now, thinking about one of your questions too, how do you help a committee that has somebody that's a little stronger and has some ideas about how a project should go? We had a project that I was working on, a local project where we had a committee member come on board and say, hey, the handicap buttons aren't what they're supposed to be, they're not to code, and we got to change it all. After the project was complete. And this individual was getting feedback from the community. So right away we said, okay, let's take that information in, what was said, understand it, decipher it. All right, let's go do our research. So I interviewed the architect. Hey, is what's been done accurate? Does it meet code? And he's like, yeah, you're actually beyond code by what we did. Then we went to the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, the AAB, and asked them, what did we do here? Is it correct? What can we do better for the community? And they gave us some recommendations. So instead of saying to the community member, no, you can't do this, well, here's what we did. Here's how it meets the code. Here's what you could decide to do if you choose to go that route. And you guys can make the decision as a committee. So kind of diffuse the situation, explain that what we did was right, but you do have alternatives that you can pursue if you choose, and then re-engage the community for that change. So I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to close us out.
Great, thank you. So why CHA? Well, we really want to work with your community to bring this project to fruition. We have the knowledge, the skill set, and the passion for helping communities build facilities and schools that are really long overdue and really needed. So that is our presentation, and we'll hand it over to you for any additional questions.
My team, any follow-up questions anybody wants to ask? All set? They're sometimes very quiet.
We don't bite.
I know. I hope we answered, did we answer all of the, again, we didn't want to go through and kind of question by question. Sometimes that's a little not as fluid. So we wanted to give you a little taste of, who we are and how we, help communities bring these projects to fruition. And a lot of your questions are questions that we hear regularly from communities. So we may have put a little spin on them just based on our experience. But if there's anything specific that you'd like more information on, we're happy to answer.
I think we're all set.
All right,
I think
great,
you were very
good.
thorough in going through it. So I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
And we will be getting back to you as
Great,
soon as
thank
we
you very
get all our
much.
decisions made.
Great.
So for maybe just to recap quickly for the benefit of the people who are watching at home, thank you for watching. Hopefully somebody's watching. Right, so we're in the phase of the process where we're in the middle of conducting OPM interviews. This process started with an RFS that went out, so went out to a bunch of members of the project management design community. We had 9 respondents.
We had 37 requests for the RFS and 8 total submissions of people who did submit in the end.
So 8 different firms submitted packages for us to consider. We have a subcommittee that reviewed those packages. We narrowed them down to 3 people. Tonight we had interviews with the 3 finalists.
Yes.
The committee's now going to have a discussion about what they thought about the interviews tonight, at which point the subcommittee will listen, evaluate both what they heard tonight and some of the discussion. They will submit by end of day tomorrow their submissions to Michael, who will aggregate them all. There'll be a process by which Michael, then based on probably the top 2, conducts reference checks, which is part of the MSBA process. And so that'll happen over the next couple of days. And then Carolyn will work with the subcommittee to bring them back together for one final meeting, likely early next week, to finalize the ranking, which will then be submitted. I think we have to submit it to the MSBA by next either Tuesday or Wednesday to hit the April meeting.
Okay, so does everybody get how the process, does it make sense for everybody?
Yep. So the subcommittee's going to do the scoring. They'll take their time to, we want to give them some time to go back, think about it, read the documentation, and
And when does that final scoring go to Michael?
You have till tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So you have this evening or anytime tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And again, we're going to have an additional meeting to listen to the reference checks. So there might be some, they might influence your score. So you'll actually be looking at your scores again whenever that meeting is set up, which I'm aiming for Monday, if we can all do it.
And is there going to be a sheet on an email document to fill in those scores, or we just put them in a...
You already have it. Do you have...
Oh, it's already, I haven't even looked
Yeah,
at it.
if you
Okay.
open
already
up
sitting there.
the one we used already, there's a
one
new
out to the
tab.
side? Okay.
Yeah, on the side, there's a new tab. It's one sheet, and we each have a column on the sheet.
And that we want done by tomorrow at 5.
Yeah.
And we can modify those yet again,
Yes,
once
if,
we hear the references.
yeah, if the reference check has things or concerns or whatever.
So think about tomorrow's ranking is your preliminary final. And
Yep.
then after the reference checks and any other information that's out there for the committee, you'll go final in the meeting next week.
And just so everyone understands, how you get the order, first, second, and third of everyone we saw is from our scores. Our scores are added up, and then it's numerical, first, second, third. And that goes to the MSBA with everything we did, all our scores, all our documents, everything, all the submissions. And they look at it all, and then they do have the final decision of, whether we get that highest score, the second or the third. So I just want to be real clear about that.
Just to clarify, only the subcommittee is submitting their scores?
Yes.
Okay.
And will you guys talk amongst yourselves to kind of talk about what you just sat through?
That's what we're going to do.
That's what we're doing right
Okay,
now.
you will do that tonight, okay. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if you were doing that. in
Well,
silo.
and part of it is actually listening, to you guys, because we did the first go-around when we picked the ones for the interviews by looking at all the submissions, so.
So I don't know if, do I have a volunteer to, before we take the feedback, I just want to say a public thank you to the subcommittee and Carolyn and Michael particularly, who put in a ton of work in this effort to get us here today. There's a lot of wrangling and scheduling and administration, and I appreciate all the effort, so thank you for stepping up and doing that. Okay. Do I have a volunteer?
I can start.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, my opinion, and I'm trying not to be biased because I've worked with 2 of the 3 firms before on projects.
Okay.
So I've kind of wiped that clean. But given what I heard tonight, one of the things that I think is a strong differentiator is have CHA having their own internal estimating and engineering departments is a big plus not only through the design and pre-construction process, where you can compare prices and systems and so forth, and get an idea of that, but even during the construction process, when there's a change order or so forth, having that expertise at their fingerprint, at their fingertips, I think would bode well for the town. In terms of the qualifications, they all did a great job. I think they all know the MSBA process. I did like the point person for CHA. What was his name? Sean Cormier. I thought he was well spoken and seemed. But they all did a great job. I mean, it's really tough. But that's so. All things being equal, having those components with in-house engineering capabilities and estimating, I think, is important. That's it.
I can go next. Oddly, I wrote down for CHA, cost estimating. It was the one key differentiator that stood out to me. Now, I could see why the subcommittee had these three firms. They're all, everybody has the depth and breadth to do the job. I think what the interviews give you, they're really presentations. What they give you is their style. And what is the style of that firm and the presentation style? Because I look at it, this OPM is really also not only, they become part of our face into the community. And so is there a particular style that resonates with us, that spoke to us? Me personally, CHA, I think, told it in a very storytelling style. They educated us without being educated, without just like you asked us this, we need this. They told the process through the timeline. So I was impressed by their style, but I think they all have kind of the depth and breadth they all know the MSBA process, they all know the funding, they'll be able to do all that admin work. That's a critical element. I don't want to downplay that, but I thought that was something else that stood out to me.
So Vertex was the first one, right?
Yes.
I found it interesting that they have built so many schools right around us, and that can be a blessing or a curse. And having the gentleman lead, be a Medfield resident, again, can be a blessing or a curse, because he knows what we went through before. He's hearing his neighbors. So that can, again, it's good and bad. But I found, to your point about the style, I like their style. I also like the last group, CMA. Is it CMA or CHA? CHA. And Tony, you brought up a point I was wondering about, with having the in-house expertise, was that a sort of significant value? I'm listening to you just comment now, that reassured that having that in-house is very beneficial. So, like, just listening to what they had to present, you guys are closer to what you were asking. I didn't know the questions that we had asked, and that's why I didn't get a chance to dig in as deep. I like the style that the first and the third one did, where they kind of narrated to answer your questions without having to bulletize them. And question number one, here's number one answer. I didn't really like the style that my group did. Again, all three seemed extremely qualified and have done multiple projects for MSBA. Vertex was interesting, again, because they've done so much right in our backyard. And then CHA, having all the architectural expertise, which they seem to hone in on that more than the other groups. So it's like a toss up between those two, and then I put the second presenter kind of not as high on my list, but not a knock.
I'm not going to weigh in.
This is not my wheelhouse, clearly. But what I will say is, I think I'm in the same order as you. The middle one would have been my third. I think between Vertex and CHA, when I went on their website and saw they have like a history of their organization, and it seems like they're buying up a lot of other firms. And I know for us, this is a really big project to us, and it is a big project to the town of Medfield. It is not a big school like, it's an elementary school in comparison to all the other things. I mean, if you look, they have all these, I don't know, I worry about us getting lost, and I thought it was interesting that the other two firms talked about how who you see is who you're gonna get, and that made me a little nervous with Vertex, like, are we gonna just keep getting different people? I don't know, so I was left with some questions. I think with CHA, just because my in-laws live on Martha's Vineyard, and I know a lot about that project and how hard it's been and how complicated it is with the barge and getting materials over, like, trying to build a high school is a $333 million project that's gone through a lot of headaches to try to get there. And their school building committee has 23 people on it. So I looked at that and I was just like, but you have 4 towns, right? So it's a very unique situation. The island financing is very different between Oak Bluffs and Edgartown. So to me, that was kind of gave me a little more vote of confidence that they like actually got that, like they recently voted to pass, it's moving forward. Like, to me, that was a big feather in the cap for me with the last one for CHA.
I'll preface this by saying PMA, was it PMA? Yeah. PMA was not my top choice, but one thing that they did extremely well is they emphasized their ability to really push marketing and community engagement much more so than Vertex, and even a little bit more so than CHA. And I think for us, like, I'm not saying that they're better at that, right? They're probably all the same when it comes down to it, but they recognize the importance of that for us and for our community, and, you know, really pushing towards the yes vote. And I think they were very smart to emphasize that in their presentation. And they spent a long time talking about, like, how great their marketing is and how, you know, how successful they are and how targeted it is. I think CHA did something similar, and I think that I liked their style a little bit more. So I think, you know, to your point, I think that their style was a little bit more in line with, like, the storytelling and kind of the soft push. So a CHA would be my top choice. But I do think that that marketing piece is important. And I didn't hear that from Veritex. I didn't, maybe I just missed it, but.
Do you want the voters to share or not really?
I was thinking if everyone else could just share, and then we'll just be listening.
Perfect. I think they're all awesome. I think like, I don't think we would go wrong either way. You know, maybe just a couple thoughts reflecting on just some of the feedback I heard. I think on Meredith's point of the team, I think, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, the team that we're going to be working with day in, day out, you're going to want to, like, make sure that, you know, there's a good style match and that you really get along with them. You also want to make sure that there's, so I think, you know, Michael, as you maybe conduct the references, and I know that's pretty formulaic, but if there's any you know, feedback from the references in terms of, like, any bait and switch on the team, or, like, did you get who they said they were going to give you? I think that would be an important consideration for the subcommittee when you come back with that final data. You know, and same thing for the committee. I think, you know, within the presentations, there's the availability of time and just an assessment of, like, people that are in the room, you know, do we think that they're going to have the right amount of time to give to the project? So however that process works between the reference checks and then also the negotiation, making sure that their committee meets people that we want.
They do say in their submissions, because that's one of the questions, who your team is going to be, and they give you a percentage. But again, whether saying it and then what happened in reality is a good check, I think.
So, like, that's just like, I was, like, for example, like, I like, you know, I did like the CH team a lot, but you know, Amanda, who's, you know, the big boss, it's like, she says 5% available. The guy who's a former public safety commissioner, 15% available. You know, Sean, who like 30. I assume 30 is probably a good or right enough number, but, you know, that's where I would, you know, as you get into the final decision, I would just be very kind of cognizant of that. I think that you know, PMA was wise to answer the mail, to your point on the communications. I like that CHA actually had a team member whose job that was going to be. Versus, I think the idea that PMA is they're paying somebody in Chicago in their corporate office to go do it for you versus someone who's going to be embedded. I think that CHA was wise to bring that person to the meeting because I think that'll make a big difference for us in terms of what we know we need to do and what we want to do. And then to Vertex's credit, I want to get shy away. I think that they have. I think their assets were one, the fact that multiple engagements, multiple projects around here. So we should be able to get a really clean read on their reputation as we do the reference checks from that perspective. And then they more than the other two had a very keen focus on maximizing the reimbursement rate and making sure that they're bringing costs that were kind of under the cost curve. And we know that when we get into that, that'll be like a really important piece of what we need to do. And so, I don't know. I think it's, I think there's a lot of great opportunities. I was impressed by all three. I think if I had to lean, it would probably be CHA a little bit over Vertex, but I think with any of the three based on where we get battle references and time.
Yeah, just so you guys know, you probably do. So Tim Bonfatti used to own Compass Project Management. He's from Medfield. So Vertex bought him out. So Tim Bonfatti's firm did a lot of school projects in this area because that's where they were based out of Medfield. So
That's why the proximity.
that's why. So Vertex on their screen has a lot of projects within the Medfield Millis area. They bought this firm about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no. Hey,
That's not bad.
they all are buying these firms up.
I said around here, but I think like the highlight the repeat business too. I mean, that to me speaks volumes of like great to see that have to do project. That's a strong endorsement.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a building question. So we'd asked that question about CMA, build. And then the last company said there were 2 ways,
Yeah.
but the other company said there were 3. There was a mix of 2.
Yeah, I didn't really.
So I was confused.
I was confused too. I was
Okay.
going to ask the question.
I think I know what they're talking about.
You do, yeah. So I'm typically schools is design bid build.
Yeah.
Or CMIC risk.
Right.
The other one was kind of a hybrid, but I wasn't sure. Maybe you can explain how that would work.
Yeah, so they would go out and bid out all the smaller stuff prior to hiring a construction manager.
Okay.
Okay. So like all the small kind of things that they can do, like they have a cost estimator, right? That's usually part of a package deal. There's traffic studies. There's certain things that they can, bid out.
So anybody could do the hybrid that wasn't, it was interesting to me that some mentioned it, and some said, no, there's 2 ways, the other, some ones said, no, there's 3 ways.
I just think that they're bigger, so they have more access to.
To do that. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Like a little bit of a commingled strategy that it wasn't proprietary, but it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was going to ask some questions about it, but I figured we'll deal with that later.
So let me ask something on top of that. So if they're doing these other things ahead, where does that money come from? Have we already approved the project and then they do small bits before the GC comes in?
It's like I said, I heard them, what they were talking about, I've never heard of it before. I was gonna ask questions about it, but I figured, let's just see if they're gonna get selected, and then we can stop. I mean, that's so far down the road, whether we go CM at
Yeah.
risk or design bid build. It was interesting, I just didn't follow it. I've never, I've been in the business for a long time, I've never heard of it, but, yeah, I'm sure there's some.
It seemed interesting.
It seemed interesting. I
was like, is it something that you just know needs to get done? Like, you need to tear down this extra building. Let's just go ahead and do that.
Yeah, maybe for something like that, they say, okay, we can hire the demolition contractor early in the process, bid it out separately from the GC or CM, construction manager. We can handle that to get the building down. So when we do hire the contractor, the site is ready, for construction. Could be something like that.
Yeah, it's not like they're moving parts out from the
Yeah, I
base
mean,
bid.
I'm sure it's high grade.
There is a FAF center that might need to be moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing, like CHA, like the only thing that was in the presentation, other designers, we primarily work with these two, but then we threw like 83 names on the page, just list every designer out there. And so it seemed like that they were a little bit more targeted in terms of how they work on the outside. Again, I'm not sure if those are the handful of designers that really do most of the work on that. But I did the flip side of that is I like the idea that a lot of the team has architecture experience and qualifications as well. We're fortunate to have kind of Tony's expertise in the committee, but it's definitely an area where we're a little underrepresented in terms of building experience and that full cycle. So they brought a little bit more capabilities to the table in that area. I think that would be helpful.
If that ends up being the allotted team.
What's that?
If that is the allotted team.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly, right. That's what it's all
I was
about.
thinking that too.
Anything else anybody wants to add in? So I sent you all that flyer. Could you just let me know if you have a concern with it? Because if you don't, I'm gonna let the neighborhood captains start sending that out to people and putting it up. It's just a quick little brief flyer. They brought up this point at the meeting that people can only take small little pieces of information at a time. And so they want to start putting out small little pieces of information in sort of with social media. And somebody had just been at an event and the person said, oh, well, they haven't decided where they're gonna do the school yet. And the neighborhood captain said, oh, yeah, they have. And so that was what led to this idea of decisions get made, let's put out small little pieces of information, and keep doing that. So if you're all, take a couple days, no hurry, but I just need.
Looks great.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it was okay with everybody. Just wanted to explain why those kind of things were going out. It's going to be a strategy as we go forward. And we need someone for the video, Christine.
By the way, they stole our idea on the videos with the superintendent. Right?
What?
They stole our idea with the videos.
They stole our idea, yeah. So we need.
We should talk about the pool we're putting in.
Oh, the pool on the
Yeah,
roof,
that's-
that'd be so much fun.
Good rumor.
So if anyone would be so kind to stay just a couple of minutes and give us a quick video, because that is the most popular thing that gets clicked and looked at from what we do. All right, anything else before I take a motion?
So the next question, so what are the kind of the key things you're gonna go dive a little deeper in?
That's Mike.
Are all uniform, so Mike has.
It's a script.
Yeah, you have to ask the questions of each of the, you have to call each reference, you have to ask those questions, and you have to just write the answers.
And then I have to add those two questions to it.
So
It's
you
a,
have
it's,
to
so MSBA has a form, which I shared with the committee, and it's a lot of work.
I found, like you said, these weren't interviews, they were presentations, and I too, it's been a little hard, not having done this way before, the scripted nature of it. Like, we had to create the questions and give them, and we couldn't ask a question. We could ask about one of the questions, if we didn't get a good answer, why I asked one little piece, but we couldn't just put another question at the moment, like, now that you're here, I'd like to ask you this.
You can?
That, you can't do that.
No.
Because whatever you give to one has to go with the other two. So if you didn't do it for the first one,
I didn't know that. I almost
Oh, I
typed.
can never work for the public.
I know, there's
Go crazy.
there is the frustration, but the good news is money,
I mean,
public
for the most part.
process.
Oh, I know, no, I understand.
That is the piece, but no, I agree with you, Tony. That made it hard.
I
Very
can only imagine.
hard. You could, yeah.
I can only imagine.
All right, will I take a motion
I
to
give you a lot of
adjourn?
credit.
Make a motion to adjourn the March 4th meeting of the School Building Committee at 7:26 PM.
Yes, I would love that.
That's that motion.
Can I have a second? Second. All right. Go to it, Bill.
Bill Werner, yes.
Robert Worth, yes.
Bob Meany, yes.
Carolyn Casey, yes?
Leo Brem, yes?
Tony Thomas,
Meredith Chamberlain, yes.
Thanks for the coffee.
Get out there. Friday night, come watch the girls' playoff game.